Welcome back into the Enrichment Sports Source. Emergency medicine, cancer care, a heart institute, robotic surgery center, a stroke center, labor and delivery center, orthopedic experts. Whatever type of medical care or treatment you need, I urge you to turn to Tennova. And the best thing I can say about Tennova is this will be my third Christmas since being diagnosed with cancer. The lab results said that if not for Tennova, I probably wouldn't have seen more than one or two more Christmases. So I owe them my life. I can't give you a better plug for a sponsor, for a partner on this show than I can for Tennova Healthcare. Do yourself a favor. I trust them. Tennova.com is where you can learn more about all the medical help that they can provide you and your family. Tennova. All right. Back with Jimmy, Bob, Mike, and Chuck. Want to take a quick look at Butch Jones and what he did this year compared to a couple of guys who had success early on in their tenures. That's James Franklin and Hugh Freeze. And what we've done here, I want to see winning records. All right, what did these coaches do against teams that won 7 or more games in the regular season? All right, you see James Franklin, 1-4 last year, 1-4 this year. He's beaten 2 teams with winning records, but he's 8-4 overall. He's just beating a lot of duds. Then you got Hugh Freeze, 1-6 his first year, went 6-6 overall because they had an easier schedule. 3-4 this year. He had an improvement this year. 7-5 overall still though. Butch Jones, 2-6, 5-7 overall. There was a lot more hype and joy and wow, those guys are really getting it done for Franklin and for Freeze than there has been for Jones, simply because that overall number was 5-7. But the reality is, against the schedule he was playing, he was better than James Franklin. And he's pretty much been as good as Hugh Freeze. Thoughts on that? I mean, am I spinning that?
It's a fair point. I mean, if Vanderbilt had played Tennessee's schedule the last 2 years, Vanderbilt would have had difficulty being any better than 6-6. May have had trouble being bowl eligible. Yeah. So yeah, the schedule has a lot to do with it. People ignore that, and we didn't know. I certainly didn't, that Missouri and Auburn would be that good this year. Okay, so the schedule ended up being a lot harder than I thought it would be. But you have to factor in a schedule when you look at what a coach is doing, in particular early in his tenure at a school.
Yeah, and I know that people are going to compare the Franklin thing and say Franklin beat him head-to-head. He did.
That's true.
But I think those teams were incredibly even.
Yeah.
I think it turned out being incredibly even. I think if an official in the booth doesn't say, yeah, I'm going to overturn this, Tennessee wins the game. It was that close that it came down to an official's call, kind of, which way it rolls. Those fair numbers, or do you think that's spin?
No, I mean, you have to look at that, and especially in the case with Vanderbilt and what their schedule is. Tennessee, what record were you supposed to have this year? You beat one of the 2 rivals that you haven't been able to beat in South Carolina, and I have Georgia and South Carolina in that mix. But what was your record supposed to be with the talent at hand and the schedule you had to play that was, the 4th most difficult in this country on one of the polls I saw? So, I mean, that's what I would ask.
Mike?
Schedule's everything, really. And yet,
look at Florida State. They've played no one. Yeah.
But just counter to almost every argument we could make is look what Gus Malzahn did this year at Auburn.
But that's a totally different beast than what Tennessee does. Gus Malzahn recruited his guys. Gus Malzahn recruited them to his system. Then he leaves. Then he comes back. He's got the players he wanted there to begin with.
I agree with
all
that, but still, when you look at 5-7, 12-1,
it's also the exception.
Yeah, I don't think that's a fair comparison.
I think the comparison's more between Brent Bielema and Butch Jones than it is between Gus Malzahn and Butch Jones.
Tell me this: if you took Gus Malzahn's roster, gave it to Butch Jones, do you think they're better than 5-7?
Yes, I do.
You think Gus Malzahn's 12-1 if he gets Butch Jones' roster?
Just give me Nick Marshall.
Well, I mean, do you think Gus Malzahn's
Nick Marshall?
Yeah, give Tennessee Nick Marshall.
Give Justin Worley to Auburn. Let's see if they're 12-1. I mean, I just don't think that's a apples to apples. But a lot of people see it the way you do. I don't care about any of that. That's the record.
I just think that it's just a wild card in this whole argument.
Well, I think it impacts people. I think they see it, and they just, bottom line is, we want to do that too, and I don't want to hear your excuses. Speaking of excuses, let's go ahead and share something else here. I'm not comparing Butch Jones. I'm not saying Butch Jones is going to be Nick Saban, but for all the guff this year, all the upset, here's Nick Saban in his first year at Alabama. Okay, he was 3-5 against winning teams. Butch Jones was 2-6 against teams that had winning records in the regular season. Nick Saban beat Arkansas, Houston, and Tennessee, and Jones beat Western Kentucky, wound up 8-4, and South Carolina. The difference is one game overall, 6-6, 5-7. Now, Alabama went on and won a bowl game, so they finished 7-6. But Tennessee's lost 31-17 on the road to Florida. Alabama's lost at home to Louisiana Monroe. I just think there needs to be a little bit of perspective given when you look at what Butch Jones did. I don't think there's no reason for a ticker tape parade down Gay Street. You don't celebrate it. At the same time, the level of, he's just another Dooley that you hear out there is absolutely ridiculous when you look at what he inherited. Mike Shula left Nick Saban with a little more talent than Derek Dooley left Butch Jones, and yet their numbers are pretty equal.
Yeah, clearly he did.
And Western Kentucky, you know, what everybody thought before the season, that's kind of a dangerous game. But then when Tennessee beat them, you thought, they weren't really any good. But whoa, they're 8-4. They were pretty good.
Yeah, and beat Kentucky. Thoughts on the just overall looking at all those numbers? How we agree that schedule plays a huge part in it, but moving forward, do you think it matters? I mean, I think it goes back to we want to do it. So do it.
Does it matter to fans?
Right.
No,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter to fans. I mean, if Tennessee had gone 12-0 and not played a team ranked in the top 25, people would have thought it was the greatest coaching job ever. I mean, but you had the schedule that you had. I mean, I have several friends of mine that are big Tennessee fans that lived game to game or play to play in some cases.
The roller coaster.
And, I mean, in the end, I mean, to quote Denny Green, they are who we thought they are. Yeah. Or were.
But one thing that it comes back to me, though, is you can talk about Vanderbilt and you can talk about Franklin, and I agree with a lot of that. But what happened when you played that guy head-to-head? I mean, you can talk about Vanderbilt's easier schedule. You still let that game slip away. I'm not putting that on Butch Jones.
But again,
I'm putting that on Tennessee. And that would have got you your main team goal that was reachable, bowl eligible.
But how different is that if the guy in the booth follows the rules instead of makes them up on his own? Then we don't even have that discussion.
But if the guy had marked it right in the first place, he'd gotten the first down.
Well, but still, you needed to cover the pass on the next play.
You should score more than 10 points against
If
Vanderbilt.
the bus hadn't had a flat tire.
That's right.
I think
Here's
Tennessee
the
and Vanderbilt
thing.
were very even.
I think
I
they
do
were
too.
very good.
Here's the thing too about the situation with Butch Jones, in my opinion. He not only inherited Dooley's roster, he inherited fan impatience
Yeah.
because there'd been a number of years where Tennessee's not been where you want it to be. So then instead of giving him, well, let's stick with him a few years and be patient, I think there's a buildup of several years that has affected the fans.
15 since you won an SEC championship, and that eats at you, especially after the heights of how high you were rolling when you won that last back-to-back SEC title in the 15 years since. Yeah, I mean, I think he is paying, in a sense, for the sins of the father ahead of him. All right, when we come back, the key for Tennessee, obviously, is recruiting. We've said it. Speed. How are they doing on the recruiting trail? We're going to break that down next. Come on back. We'll talk Tennessee recruiting on the Enrichment Sports Source.
Miss an episode of the Enrichment Sports Source? Catch up online at sportsource.tv.